So the problem that my book solves is it helps people get unstuck, right? And one of my quotes is, "It's okay to get stuck, but it's not okay to stay there." And it happens as humans, right? We get stuck. We're on the path to what we want, and things happen. We allow the outside world to dictate our thinking. We go into resistance, right? And the root cause of resistance is what is happening shouldn't be happening, and we get stuck, and we can stay there for a long time. And so I wrote the book to give people techniques and tools to get unstuck. And there's 50 concepts in here, very short little chapters with action steps and things that you can do to get unstuck. And you might stay on a concept for several weeks to make it a habit, but that's the purpose of the book. And chapter 1 is stop worrying. And the worst emotion is worry. Our ego traps us between past regrets and fear of failure. We often miss living life in the here and now. What we think about grows. Whether the object of your focus is good or bad, the significance grows while the thoughts you avoid fade. Worrying is a habit that provides a false sense of control. It never turns the situation into a positive outcome. Usually we have no control or influence over the outcome. Yet the more you think of good fortune, the more you will experience. So that's the teaching. The quote, I love this. When I look back on all these worries, I remember the story of the old man who said on his deathbed that he had had a lot of trouble in his life, most of which had never happened. Winston Churchill, right? So the resource I recommend is How to Stop Worrying and Start Living by Dale Carnegie, okay? And so, powerful book. And it saved my life in many instances because the action step is break your worry pattern by journaling on a current issue. Ask yourself the following questions. So what you want to do is you want to interrupt the pattern, right? If you're worrying, instead of just ruminating on it, you want to interrupt the pattern. And when you put pen to paper, okay, it interrupts that pattern and you ask and answer these questions. What am I afraid of? Write it down. What is the worst thing that can happen? Write that down. If that happens, what will I do? Okay. And then lastly, tell yourself 99% of what you worry about never happens. If needed, think back on initial worries and confirm that the actual events weren't even close to what your mind created. Focus on the next step you can take to resolve this. If it's outside your control, trust and let it go. And notice how you feel before and after this exercise. So fear is, we believe that whatever happens to us, we won't be able to handle it, but we'll be able to handle it. And so the story in the book was, I was on a incentive trip, a 5-day Alaskan cruise, and I got some really bad news at the beginning of that cruise. And I was in resistance. What is happening shouldn't be happening. And then literally a few days in, I'm like, I'm so sick of being a victim of worrying. And so I literally went to the theater of the ship and I asked and answered those questions. And I sat there and I said, you know what? I am not moving until I shift. And I wrote at the bottom of this paper, after about 4 hours of sitting there, 99% of what I worry about never happens. And then anytime it would creep up again for the next several days, I would just tell myself 99% of what I worry about never happens. And what happened? Well, I had an amazing time. The first few days, horrible time. But once I got the habit broken and I interrupted the pattern and I did the work and I journaled and I sat there with it, I had an amazing time. As I look back on that trip, it was a great trip. And it was also a phenomenal lesson in I could control my thinking. If I did the work, if I put in the work, I can control my thinking. And my whole personal development journey, as laid out in that book, was about creating a peaceful mind. If I wanted to have a peaceful life, I needed to create a peaceful mind. And who had to create a peaceful mind? I had to create the peaceful mind. So anyway, get the book. It's powerful. It's going to help you get out of your own way. I still have to use it on myself sometimes as I get stuck, but it will make an impact.